but I've never called them up. All right, on today we are going to be talking about Mendel and genetics. Today, because we did have quite a few days that we had off, because we had quite a few days off, I do need to go over some review with you. So we are taking some notes today for a review of the information, but on tomorrow, Friday, and next week, I will promise you that these classes will be worthwhile. But this is some interesting information because it does explain to you how you came to look and act the way that you did. So the note sheet that you have in front of you is titled Mendel and Genetics. We're going to be completing that, and I'm going to be asking for your input. Now, some of the information that it's requiring is on your homework that you've already turned in, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still know the information. In addition to that, you will have a homework assignment titled Genetics Homework. You're going to need your notes to complete that, so we do need to get finished everything so that you can complete your homework. So let's go ahead and get started. When you're looking at your note sheet, I want you to look at this word bank, if you will, up here. And I'm going to be randomly calling on you, asking you for information off of your note sheet to see what is going to be filled in from this word bank. And then I'm going to be explaining some things because some stuff is new on here. So looking at this sheet, the word genotype. What bubble in the word bank best represents genotype? Physical characteristics is incorrect. Genotype. It's on your notes. No. Now let me ask you this. When we are describing individuals, meaning, well, what are some words that we use to describe them? Like, what are some words that you would use to describe yourself? No, sir. Give me something else. Short. Tall. Skinny. Fat. What about hair color? Eye color. Those types of things. Those would be your physical characteristics. But this is not genotype. These physical characteristics comes from the makeup from who? Your parents. You gain some things from your parents during the phase where the sperm and the egg have met together and they start to develop. Once they've met together, that sperm and that egg are pulling something from your parents and giving it to you to create this pair, which then shows up as your traits. That pair is your genotype. What up here is showing pairs? The R's, the capital R, capital R, capital R, lowercase r, lowercase r, lowercase r. What are those called though? We don't say capital R and lowercase r. Recessive and dominant. Recessive and dominant R's. Which one should we always say first? Dominant. The dominant one. So what goes in the genotype area is that information. When we're talking about genotypes, we're talking about the actual letter combination that represents your traits. So this could represent round face. Maybe round face, the shape of your face round is dominant over a skinnier type face. And could be what these R's are representing. These R's could represent in the pea plants that Mr. Mendel had studied, the wrinkleness or the roundness of the peas. Whether it's going to be round or if it's going to be all shriveled up and wrinkled looking. Because that's not always an old pea. That is actually the characteristics of the pea. So, phenotype is then what? Why are you scared? Those are your physical. Physical. So your phenotype is going to tell you if your face is round, if your skin tone is darker or lighter, if your hair is black or brown or blonde, if your hair is curly or straight, if you're tall or short, if you're heavier set or smaller set. what your eyesight is like. All of those types of things are your physical type, and they are represented by the genotypes that you gather from your mom and your dad. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. Then moving on. Looking at your note sheet, when we're looking here, this line here, this line is asking you, what is this box called?
A Punnett Square.
A Punnett Square. Where did it get the name? What's his name? You have the notes. Don't tell me something. He has a name. That's what he goes by. Reginald Punnett. Very good. And what is the purpose of this square?
To show
What's the likely?
I can't hear when she's talking.
to show your dominant and recessive traits and which one you'll end up having.
What do you mean by which one you'll end up having? Because there's 4 boxes there.
By one of your kids, like
So there's a specific, the possibility. So it's telling us the possibility of what though? When what happens? No, nothing about recessive and dominant yet. When what happens? What are these representing? From where though? Did we just randomly? It is telling you the possibility of the. Nope. What are the babies called? Starts with an O. Offspring. The possibility of offspring when doing what? Combining, breeding, or mating 2 parents. Does that make sense? Okay. So the Punnett Square is actually again telling us the possibility of offspring when mating 2 parents with specific genotypes. Alrighty. So with that being said, let's go ahead and complete this Punnett Square. The first box here is going to be what, everyone? Dominant R, dominant R. Because you're taking this one and this one. What's the genotype going to be here? Dominant R, recessive R. Good. What's the genotype going to be here? Don't tell me RR because they're all R's. What is it? Very good. What about here? Very good. So is there a possibility that an offspring can come out not looking like the parents? If this was talking about maybe black hair being dominant. Yes, very much so. What is the possibility? 25%. And they might end up on Maury.
25% go for R.
All right, going over here. The capital R represents what? Dominant. The dominant portion of the genotype. The lowercase r represents what? Recessive. These letters that we use to express or to describe the pairing of the physical traits is called what? What are those letters called?
where are you at?
Those letters, you don't really need to know where I'm at right now, you just need to listen. The letters that we use to describe these physical traits, what are those called? Alleles. Right here. And that is going to actually go in this area here. The star with the arrow is talking about what are these letters? These are alleles. The spelling is here. Where are your glasses? Because I'm not going to do this with you every day. All right, are we good? All right, now moving down a little bit further. Here's where some information, still review, but then we're going to be moving on to something that is not so much review. This statement here says, blank trait always go over blank trait. Dominant trait always goes over recessive trait. What does that mean? Raise your hand and tell me, what does that statement mean? Luis.
That the dominant trait is going to, like, more superior.
Not more superior. Please do not use that because I don't want anyone thinking that because they have a dominant trait, they're better than me.
Dominant is basically where it's most likely to happen in recessive trait.
What do you mean by most likely to happen?
It's more,
What? Janae?
When he said the offspring is like more likely to have the dominant trait. I can't explain.
Going back to the Punnett Square. If the offspring has, and fill in the blank, then the physical characteristic will be blank. If the offspring has blank, the physical characteristic will be blank. Fill in those blanks for me. Speak up, Makayla. Nope, speak up. Say what you said. If the offspring has a dominant, use that A word, allele, then the physical characteristic will be the dominant trait. So if the dominant trait is black hair and your genotype is capital R or dominant R, recessive R, then your hair color will be black. If brown hair is the dominant trait and you carry the dominant allele, then your hair color is going to be brown. Do you understand? So if you have the dominant allele, then you are going to have that trait. Or chances are, most likely, you're going to resemble that trait. All right, so here we are going to move on to some more information. Looking at these two statements here with the blanks, it says allele that are different. Different doesn't mean different letters. Different means the capital and the lowercase, or dominant and recessive. So different here would be the dominant R, recessive R. Or if they have the same, and this is spelled incorrectly, I apologize, spell it correctly, it should be A-L-L-E-L-E-S. Or if they have the same, meaning dominant R, recessive R, there's a name for that. So let's look at our word bank here. See if you can look at this and use your knowledge of prefixes and suffixes and see if you can acknowledge what the name of each would be. Latavia. No. Use your knowledge of prefix and suffixes, or just prefixes, or just suffixes. Louis. Nope. Makayla? Nope. No. Okay, let me go back to the notes just for a second. Let me help you. In the first statement, underline the word different. In the second statement, underline the word same. Now let me go back to the word bank.
Oh.
I got it.
Pootie.
So different would be the homo basis.
Homo's different?
No, homo same.
Okay, so you just told me different would be that though.
Homo same, and then
Hetero. Zygous. Heterozygous would be what? If they were same or different? If they had different alleles, meaning dominant and recessive pair. Heterozygous. So if they have the same genotype pair or alleles, then it's going to be called what? Homozygous. Which is down here. And all you have to do if you're writing hetero is substitute the hetero for homo. Somebody could grow up. I thought you were snickering. Are we good? Can I move?
Yes.
Who said no? Alrighty. So just going back to the note sheet, let's look over here, because yours is black and white as well as the one that's up here. But let me explain to you what's going on in this picture. We're going to look at this first row of roses. Everyone recognizes that these are roses, correct? All right, Valentine's Day is coming up, so we're looking at this. By the way, gentlemen, if your lady doesn't like roses, don't buy them for her. You're not going to make her like them. All right, the first rose, it is colored all the way in dark. Roses normally come in what color? Red roses. So if this has a dominant R, red is dominant over white. Then dominant R means that this color rose is going to be what? Red. This is a red rose. Why? Because it has the dominant trait. Therefore, it is going to express the dominant trait. All right. So it's the seed is breeded then with a dominant R, recessive R, which is a what color rose? A red rose, because it has the dominant trait. It's going to breed, there's a possibility of it breeding the dominant R, which is going to have what color rose? Red rose. Looking at that information, what kind of dominance is that? Speak up, Leon. Complete dominance. It took on the entire trait. That's a complete dominance. It says it's red. It's supposed to be red. It is red. Complete. All right? Looking at the next example. You have the dominant R. Dominant R, what color is that rose? Red. We breed it with a recessive R. Recessive R, what color is that rose? White. Why would it be white? Because it has no dominant trait. It's lowercase r, which is recessive. There is no way that's going to be red. We got that? Yeah. We breed those two together. Looking at the genotype that is formed, it is dominant R, recessive R. From our knowledge, we say that that rose should be what?
Red.
Dominant R, recessive R. Red. It should be red. However, the rose comes out pink. We've seen pink roses before, correct?
Yeah.
This happens. What kind of dominant is that? Say it.
Incomplete.
This is an incomplete. It didn't get all of the red. It just got some of it.
So they're like next cube.
Shut up.
Yes. Yes. All right. Let's look at our last rose example. Again, gentlemen, what did you learn? If your girlfriend doesn't like roses, you give her diamonds. Oh. Did I say that the first time or no? That's what I meant. Or money, or shoes, or... Just joking. All righty. Leon. He ain't no gold digger, but I'm just saying. All right. Moving on. The next example, we have a dominant R. Dominant R, what color is that rose?
Red.
Red. It's mixed with a recessive R. Recessive R, what color is that rose? All right. The offspring has a genotype of dominant R, recessive R. It would normally, we would say that rose would be red. However, that rose comes out white with red streaks. We've seen those kind of flowers before.
No.
This is a rose, but normally they're flowers. If you go into the store, you'll see them. Maybe the brim of the petals are going to be red. This is what happens here. This is this example. So what type of dominance would this be? Codominance.
Where is that at?
Codominance. So I put the word dominance on there again, but it wouldn't be considered codominance, dominance, just codominance. Co meaning that it took on both parents and expressed both of them instead of blending it together like the incomplete.
So could that happen with a child?
So we'll talk about that later, but yes. There are some people that have two different eye colors.
Oh, I was talking about skin tone.
No, you wouldn't be half and half. All right, let's move on then. All right, so then looking at the bottom portion, where you have a cross between two organisms involving one trait. So this is what we're talking about. We have, all of you are this. You have one parent, but we may only be looking at one trait. We're looking at what's your hair going to be like when we cross these two parents? What's the possibility of what your skin will look like when we cross these parents? What's the possibility of what your eyesight will look like? The possibility of what your shape will look like? Those types of things when we cross two parents. Are we going to get dominant recessive? Are we going to get recessive recessive? But we're only looking at one trait. What do you think that is? One. One is the key word. One. Monohybrid. We all are hybrids. Hybrid means that we're a mix between one parent and another. You're a mix. Hybrid means mixed. Monohybrid. The reason why it's mono is because we're looking at one mix. Got it? Okay. So now what happens when we're looking at two things, because we're not simple. We're not just hair. We're not just skin. We're not just eyes. Sometimes we look and say, okay, what's the hair color and the hair type going to be? Yeah, it may be brown, but is it going to be brown and curly? Is it going to be brown and straight? You got that? What's the eye color? Is the eye color going to be blue eyes and good vision, or blue eyes and weak vision, or blue eyes and blind? Okay, so we need to look at both of those. The fact that when we look at two organisms mixing and two different traits, what is that? Two different traits. Dihybrid. If you know how to spell hybrid, you should know how to add the words di. Because again, hybrid means the mix. All right, and then lastly, looking at the very bottom, this sums up everything. This is when the gene pairs or the alleles separate, giving one from one parent and one to another. And when we look at the Punnett Square, those gene pairs, they're separating. You take a piece of one from one parent and a piece of one from the other. The fact that they're being separated, this is the law of segregation. In this case, it doesn't mean segregating, meaning you're separating people, a separation of people. You're separating the genes between your parents to make you and your siblings. Okay? Any questions on that? All right, then go ahead and flip your papers over. That is the law of segregation. All right, so looking at the back of your paper, we're now going to do some examples of some of these difficult concepts that are on the front. This example is a dihybrid example. Now, again, a dihybrid is when we're looking at more than one genotype, more than one trait. So, in guinea pigs, everyone knows what a guinea pig is, correct? No. All right, those little mouse-looking things that... Fat gerbils? Oh, yeah, fat gerbils. All right, so in a guinea pig, rough coat is dominant over smooth coat. Rough coat would mean with the little colics, the little circles all around it. And black fur is dominant over white fur. So parent 1 has a genotype of dominant R, dominant B, recessive B. What is the phenotype of parent 1?
Is rough with black fur.
Rough coat, black fur. Why is it rough coat, black fur? Because it has dominant R's and then a dominant B, which would be the black with the recessive B, but the dominant trait is going to show. So this is the rough coat, black fur. Okay? Parent 2 has a genotype, dominant R, recessive R, dominant B, recessive B. What is the genotype of parent 2? I'm sorry, the phenotype, I apologize. Rough coat, black fur. So these two parents of these guinea pigs look alike. Right? Now, in this box, we need to show a cross between the two parents who are these two genotypes. And we're going to give these genotypes and these phenotypes and the possibilities of their offspring. Now, stay with me because this is a little bit more difficult. If you look at this box, it's no longer 4 square. There's 16 squares. Do we got that? All right, so the first thing you want to do so that you don't get confused is label the top box parent 1. And label the side area parent 2. Now what we do is when you're listing this out, you take all the possibilities of the monohybrid pairs for this parent. What's a monohybrid? So how many genotypes are in, how many alleles are in a monohybrid? 2. How many alleles? Because you took one from one parent and one from another. So how many alleles are there? 2. So it would be something like dominant R, recessive R. So you take all of the possibilities of what the first parent could have been. from the parent. So you look at the first characteristic and the second characteristic. What's the first characteristic that we're looking at? The coat. The texture of the coat. What's the second characteristic we're looking at? The color of the coat. So when we look here, we see, okay, one possibility of parent 1, we know that it's black, rough coat, black fur, but one characteristic, we look and we see that the first genotype, or the first allele, is capital R. And this is of the first pair. Looking at the second pair, the first allele would be capital B. So that's one possibility of what that parent could have been. Another possibility, again, you take the first letter, and now you look at it with the second letter. What is it? Capital R, lowercase b. The next time, now you look at the second letter, and you match it with, the second letter from the first pair and the first letter from the second pair. So what would it be? Capital R, capital B. And now again, you look at the second letter and you match it with the second letter, and it would be?
Capital R, lowercase b.
Are we good? Okay, somebody raise your hand and tell me what it would be for the first parent here. What's one of the possibilities? Raise your hand. Pooty.
Capital R, capital B.
Capital R, capital B. Asia.
Capital R, lowercase b.
Capital R, lowercase b. Somebody else. Luis.
Wouldn't it be lowercase r
And we can write it like this only here, but lowercase r,
and capital B?
capital B. Then what would be here? Yeah.
Lowercase r, lowercase.
Hold on one second.
Lowercase b.
When we're doing it for a dihybrid example, you want to write it like this so you don't get confused. But when you're actually writing out the possibilities of the offspring, always put the dominant first. Okay? Any questions so far? All right. So now we have multiple characteristics, and we need to list those multiple characteristics in each of the boxes, but we are only linking like letters, like genotypes. Does that make sense? Okay, so when we look, I'll do the first one for you. So we'll link the first letters together. The possibility of the fur texture of one offspring would be what? Give me the genotype. They're all R's. Capital R. Capital R. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put a B. I meant to put an R. And then the possibility of the color would be what?
Capital B, capital B.
Capital B, capital B. So one offspring would be rough hair, black fur. Okay? The next one. Somebody raise your hand and tell me what is the genotype pairs for the next one. Isaiah. Uh-huh. Very good. Again, he matched the two R's and the two B's. Shamaika.
Capital R, then capital B.
Okay, so this one should be capital R, and then capital B, which is dominant B, dominant B. A fourth possibility, Leon.
Capital R, capital R.
Capital R, capital R.
Capital B, lowercase b.
Capital B, lowercase b. All right. Another possibility, moving on to the second row. Renisha.
Capital R, capital R.
Capital R, capital R.
Oh, big B, little B.
Big B, little b. Dominant B, recessive B. All right. What about here, Kyle?
That's going to be capital R. Capital R.
Uh-huh.
And lowercase b, lowercase b.
Recessive B, recessive B.
Yeah.
All right. Help me out over here, Terrence. Uh-huh.
Dominant B, or,
Dominant B, good.
okay, dominant B, and, let's see.
Recessive B. Vernon over here.
Capital R.
Dominant R, dominant R. Recessive B, recessive B. You go ahead and finish it out. And then you're going to check your work with mine.
Wait, miss,
Yes.
so when we write these out, we write.
You always write the dominant one first. Yes. All right. Here's the answers. Check your work. You got to wait a minute.
Wait, how
Come
come
see me in the morning for 2.
why you put the capital B first? Huh?
You always put the dominant one first when you're coming up with the offspring. All right, quiet. I need to move on because we do have other stuff to finish so you can have your enough notes for your homework. All right, looking at the different genotypes. Here you would list all of these genotypes, obviously. I'm not going to take the time to go out and list them all because we just don't have the time. But here you will list all the possible genotypes here. This just shows that you know what the genotypes are. I'm going to list one possibility. Well, I'm going to list actually 2 possibilities. I'll list the first one, which is capital R or dominant R, dominant R, dominant B, dominant B. Another possibility then would be capital R, dominant B, recessive B. Or, no, normally if it's asking for it, you would. We're not going to take the time. I'll write 3 possibilities to do it now. All right. Uh-oh, I didn't mean to write it right there. I meant to write it right here. Sorry. Phenotypes. Phenotypes are what?
The physical traits.
So tell me a possible phenotype of this. Rough coat, black fur. What's another possibility? What about this one?
Rough and white.
Rough coat. Recessive B is what?
White.
White fur. Read. Look at, read, up here, read. It says is dominant over white fur, recessive B. Stop rolling your eyes. All right. But not only that, it's asking you what is the possibility of having offspring that are rough coat, black fur, and the possibility of having offspring that are rough coat, white fur. You could put tally marks to count it out. What would this one be?
Rough coat, black fur.
So that's 1 mark here. What would this be?
Rough coat, black fur.
Everyone. What about this one?
Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, white fur. Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, white fur. Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, black.
Isaiah, stay with us.
Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, black fur.
There should be no reason why any of you should get this wrong on a quiz.
Rough coat, black fur. Rough coat, white fur.
Rough coat, white fur.
All right. So there are 16 possibilities. So that means that what's the fraction here?
16.
How many out of 16? 12. Out of 16 chances that you're going to have a rough coat black fur. What are the chances of having a rough coat white fur? 4 out of what? 4 out of 16. All right. Moving on to the last portion. Again, on the back I put the most complex topics that are talked about on the front of your notes. So here it says Using the law of segregation, illustrate how it is possible for a child to be born with sickle cell anemia when neither of the parents have sickle cell. Remember, the law of segregation states what? Gene pairs separate and go. One, you get one from your mom and one from your dad. So then let's illustrate this. So here, we're going to draw dad. This is dad. And we're going to draw mom. Now, again, let's use sickle cell as a lowercase s, being this is the sickle cell trait. So that means the capital S meaning would be non-sickle cell. So the dominance would be the non, the recessive would be the trait, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So that means this dad is unaffected. The mom is she affected?
Yes.
No, because it says that both parents do not have it. It's unaffected. So what is the genotype for the dad?
S.
The genotype. Just dominant S?
Dominant S.
Dominant S, dominant S?
Lowercase k.
All right. Dominant S, lowercase. Dominant S.
Hold on, stop talking so you listen, because you said something, but then your last part did not make sense. If the recessive trait is sickle cell and their child has it, let me put this here. What does the child's genotype have to be? Recessive. This has to be the child's. Therefore, the parents have to what? They both have to have the recessive, so they both would be considered what? Starts with a C. Say it louder. They are carriers. So therefore, dad's genotype would be dominant S, recessive S. Mom's genotype would be dominant S, recessive S. If we do a Punnett square, again, what type of hybrid are we doing here? Monohybrid, because we're only looking at one thing. What goes, if we're doing dad up here and mom over here, what goes here?
S.
They're all S's.
Dominant S.
Dominant S, recessive S. What goes here?
Dominant S. Recessive S.
Okay. What's one possibility?
Dominant.
Does this child have sickle cell?
Yes. No.
No. What's the possibility here?
Dominant S.
Does this child have sickle cell? No. What's this possibility?
Dominant S. Recessive S.
Does this child have sickle cell?
No.
What's this possibility? Does this child have it?
Yes.
This is how it happens. The parents have to be what? Again, so the answer is the parents are carriers. Do we understand?
Yes.
Do we get it?
Yes.
All right, then I'm going to be giving you your homework.